Welcome back to the Investor Professor podcast. This is Dr. Ryan Peckham, and this is episode 95. On today's episode, we're going to talk about the stock market. Per usual, we'll talk about the earnings season that we had start rolling this past week. But we will also talk about staying in the game. I've had many people reach out to me over the last month. We've had a lot of company doing layoffs. You know, this is one of those things where it's starting to hit people we know, we hear names, all that. So a little bit of anxiety out there with people worried about being laid off. And so I just want to talk to you about staying in the game, you know, how you can kind of manage this, share a little bit of my story with you that hopefully you can relate to, that will help you kind of put things into perspective. So get your mind right. Let's get to work. Well, welcome back to the show, everybody. Episode 95. You know, I've done 95 introductions to this show, and I don't think I like any of them. I always find that the most difficult thing to do is the introduction. I don't know why. Speaking for 20 minutes at a time doesn't bother me, but a 30-second intro, not my favorite. So you look at the stock market this past week, kind of another down, kind of trading sideways type week. You look at some of the most important earnings that we had. We had Tesla. We had Procter & Gamble. Procter & Gamble, good earnings, just a sneaky good company. You know, it's really easy if you just go look at Procter & Gamble, go look and see the products that they offer, just the selection, just the number of brands that they have that do $1 billion in sales every year. I mean, you basically cannot go to a grocery store and not buy something that Procter & Gamble makes. And so those are just kind of easy, for the most part, easy investments to make. Tesla got beat up this week, and one of the reasons they did is because their margins are coming down. Sorry, I lost the word there. So their margins are coming down, and everybody's real concerned about how much money they're making. And they are using this time to be very aggressive with their competitors, right? So they're looking to put pressure on their competitors. They're willing to drop their prices because they know that they can manufacture vehicles for less than all these other EV makers. And so really, if you go back and kind of look at history, this is really Elon taking a page out of Henry Ford's book and really putting pressure on the other manufacturers. So I look at it as some short-term pain for long-term gain. Not every analyst thinks of it that way, but we will see. All I know is when I'm driving around, I have noticed Tesla charging stations popping up pretty much everywhere and in really remote places that I would not have expected. And so I think about that charging network and what that kind of what the lifetime benefit to Tesla is going to be on that. And so that was one of the things that Elon Musk said on the call, on the earnings call, was that, you know, one of the things that a lot of people miss is how much, you know, money Tesla makes off the lifetime of having a customer. So it's not just the car, right? The initial purchase, it's what they make ongoing. And so when you notice this, I think of it like this, you know, if you go buy a printer, right, you can go buy a printer and they'll basically give it to you, and then they charge you an obscene amount for the ink cartridges, right? Well, with Tesla, you know, there's not a lot of different chargers out or any chargers. I mean, very rarely. So when you look at this, you know, you're plugging into a Tesla charger, they're making money. It's not like you get a choice of like gas stations to go to, right? So think about if like Exxon owned all the gas stations, how much more money that would mean for them. And so when you think about Tesla, I mean, it's a little bit, I know it's a little bit more complicated than that, but maybe not too much. I mean, they're going to be making money every time somebody charges and they're using all their equipment, they're ordering something or whatever. So, you know, looking at this lifetime, you know, what is the value of a customer for the life of the car? You kind of can see why that might get some people excited. It's like Apple, right? So it's not just buying the Apple phone. It's what is the value of a customer that's on an Apple device that, buys music, subscribes to this, buys apps, spends money on that, right? So it's the whole ecosystem that becomes very beneficial. And so this week we have a lot of, earnings definitely going to continue. I believe we have Google this week. We have some big tech names this week. And so we can discuss them, maybe Amazon again this week. And so, there's going to be some pretty big earnings coming up this week, and we'll see how the market, trades off of that. There's been some, it's been odd. I'm looking at some of these earnings reports, and when the earnings come out, the stock trades down. And then when they have the earnings call, and we have mentioned this before, the management team's able to add some context to what they have going on, and all of a sudden the stock comes back. So you got to be kind of real careful when you're trading around earnings. If you're thinking about starting a new position, like right now, if you're thinking about starting a new position, one of my pieces of advice would be go check and see when their earnings are, and then make a decision. Do I want to buy some before the earnings, or do I want to buy a little bit before the earnings? And then if they slip on earnings, I'm going to buy a little bit more. But you just have to be aware of these things, because you don't want to start a full position in a company. All of a sudden they report earnings and you get, kind of kicked, if you will, and the stock trades down. So you just have to be careful and be aware of, what's going on and what the companies are reporting. So my main message this week, as I said in the beginning, was staying in the game. And I bring this up because I've had a couple of you reach out. I don't even know if they're listeners. I don't know, some former students, some clients, and they're talking about all these layoffs, right? Meta is once again announcing that they're going to lay people off, and they're starting to lay not that some people that work for Meta are not talented, but they're starting to lay off real talent, real engineer, people with very specific skills. And so all of a sudden, I'm starting to get rumblings of people who have known somebody that's been laid off, or they're worried that they're going to be laid off, or they're in an industry that that's starting to lay people off, or there's hints, right? There's smoke. So last year, it was all the people who do mortgages, right? Companies were laying off mortgage departments left and right. Now you're hearing about commercial real estate, right? That there's this commercial real estate people aren't going to renew their leases. They're going to get smaller leases. The commercial real estate people are going to have a really hard time. They're going to have to go through layoffs. They're going to be in a recession. And this kind of goes with the conversation we had last week where I said, maybe the country doesn't have a full recession across the board, but we have kind of this rolling recession, right? Where if you're in the mortgage business, you're definitely in a recession. Technology, recession, commercial real estate, perhaps that recession is coming. And so you just kind of have this. And then I know I have a lot of former students that go into consulting, business consulting, maybe it's financial consulting, accounting consulting. And then all of a sudden, if companies aren't hiring consultants anymore, they're trying to get lean and mean, they start looking for places to cut. So, it is scary. And especially if you're younger and you've never been through this before, it's something that you definitely have to be cognizant of. And I remember when I was younger and, the financial crisis, I graduated college in 2002, right after the tech bubble burst and the jobs disappeared rather quickly. My advice to you would be, if you're in an industry that you really like, right? That you're in the industry that you want to be in, you have to figure out a way to stay in the game. You have to figure it out. And so I remember I started my investment firm in 2009. Now, I don't know if I need to remind you, but in 2009, that was the financial crisis. And let me tell you, do you think people wanted to talk to somebody about their investments or their stocks? Or, I had people tell me, I just lost 50% of my money. Why would I want to talk to you? Right? No reason. They just had this disdain for the investment world, right? But I love the business. I always have loved the business. And I thought, you know what? If I can make it now, like I can make it anytime, right? Like if I can somehow figure out to make it now, like I'll be able to make it anytime. And so because the industry was so beat up and I had zero prospects for clients or whatever, I basically, I was able to go do some research, figure out how to do it on my own, talk to a couple people, said, hey, would you support me in this? They said yes. And I said, okay, like, let's go. I started with 3 people. You can listen back on previous episodes, but I started with 3 clients. And that was it. And it wasn't enough to sustain me. So I took another job. I worked for a bank for a number of years. I mean, this is how my teaching career got started. I was teaching, classes at night. I mean, this is where that whole, career got started. And I never knew where that was really going to lead. And, it was really some blind faith. But I knew I loved the industry, and I knew if I stuck with it, that eventually, hopefully, that it would work out. And so if some of you are like, you like the industry, you don't know if the job's going to work out, you don't know, you really never know how this stuff's going to work. But I can tell you, looking back at where I was in 2008, 2009, I could never have dreamed that things would work out the way they have. As far as my teaching career, even working for a bank, that was great for me just to be able to understand how that works. I feel like that makes me a better advisor. I just know that business in and out, or right? I just have a lot of experience. So when you think about the different jobs you take, you have to think about, is this going to give me some experience that's going to help me in the future? And so, perfect example, when I was interviewing to take that banking position, and I still had my small client base, I got offered another job that was really good, but it was in a completely different industry. And that was kind of a crossroads, because I was like, man, this would pay me more, but it's not anywhere close to related to like what I want to do long term. Right. And so my first job out of college, I took that job straight up 100% based completely on the salary. And, I did not enjoy that position, and I promised myself I would never do that again. And so, at the end of the day, I took the banking position because I knew, I was like, okay, I'm doing investing. Banking is not that far of a stretch. It deals with money. I'm going to meet some people. If I eventually one day tell them I'm doing investing and they knew me from banking, it's not that far away. They're already used to talking to me about money. So it's pretty close, right? And so the same thing with my teaching. Like, I've had people say, man, you're so busy. Well, you're so busy. And it's like, it's the same ecosystem, right? Like, I'm doing this podcast, but I'm talking about investing. I talk to clients about investing. I talk to students about investing. Like, it's just the same conversation to a different audience. And so, if you're thinking about, what am I going to do? You just have to think about, you got to bet on yourself, right? And we talk about investing in yourself. And I'm here to tell you, nobody is ever going to take care of you like you're going to take care of you. No boss is going to take care of you like you're going to take care of you. No company is going to take care of you and save you in times of trouble, right? You're seeing this. You're seeing so many people, they have dedicated their life to these companies. And it's not that companies are bad. It's just that when you have a recession or you have times get bad, it becomes self-preservation, right? It's self-preservation. So I'm sorry that we have to let you go, but we got to protect the company first, and it's not that you're a bad person. We just don't have the space for you anymore. We wish you the best of luck. And, they're telling this to somebody who has a mortgage, a spouse, children, and they're going, well, how am I supposed to pay my, my bills and stuff? Well, it becomes real. It becomes real. And you really haven't seen it in the, the employment data that we see, right? The economic numbers that we're looking at. You haven't seen it yet because a lot of the companies that have laid people off have been pretty nice about it, and they've given people packages, right, where they're paying them for 3 months or whatever. And so you're going to start seeing that show up in the unemployment numbers, I think, rather quickly. But I'm telling you, if you keep whatever dream you have alive, even if it's just a small flame, and you're working at another company and you just put in an hour a night or whatever it is, but you never let that dream die, you will be so thankful to yourself 10 years later. You just cannot let the dream die. You got to keep the flame going. You got to keep, just working on it a little bit at a time. And it's amazing what you can do over time. And like I've said before, we overestimate what we can do in a year, and we underestimate what we can do in 5 to 10 years. And so one of the hardest things, I believe, this is my opinion, one of the hardest things I believe is to find the industry that you really like, or the field of, whatever you're in, like finding what you feel is your true calling is very difficult to do. So if you have found that and you're worried about layoffs, you're worried about whatever, do whatever it takes to stay in the game and stay in that business, because this will not last forever. And at the end of it, depending on what industry you're in, it could actually be beneficial for you, because there might be a lot of people who leave that industry, and then when times get better, you'll have less competition, right? So, I think about businesses like real estate, or even my business, like investing. When we go through tough times, I'm almost like, hey, this isn't a bad thing. It like shakes the tree. It gets the people who are pretending to be in the business out of the business, creates a little space, and, allows customers, clients, future prospective clients to realize like, hey, who's really serious about this business and who's going to be in it for the long haul. And so, future clients or customers of yours, or even employers of yours, are going to be, pretty amazed that you did whatever you could to stay in that field. And so if it's something you don't like, well, then, it could be a blessing in disguise that gets you out of your comfort zone to go find something that you really want to do. Because there's really, it is not, when you're thinking about Monday on Saturday and you're dreading it, you're dreading going to work on Monday, on Saturday, and then Sunday, you're really angry. Man, that is just not a place to be. And we've all been there. You just can't stay there. So if that's where you're at, you need to look at how do you shift careers, or shift to a different place to where you're really going to have some fulfillment. So, but I think this is a good just conversation to have with yourself, to kind of just do a check and see. But it is, you're probably going to meet somebody, you're going to know somebody, you're going to have a personal connection to somebody that gets laid off, and it's not easy, right? It's not fun, but it's part of it. And, my generation, millennials, which I say I'm considered by birth a millennial. Not really sure about that. But anyways, like there was an article this week that showed millennials are behind basically all the two generations ahead of them on every metric financially. And one of the ones that kind of spoke to me, or kind of hit me in the face, if you will, was one that said that 50% of millennials think they'll never own a home, which is incredibly sad. And we're behind. There's not a, I think, millennials, 42% of millennials own a home. And, those numbers got to get up. That cannot stay the same. So, there's a lot of individuals who probably feel like they're behind where they should be, and then having another round of layoffs now coming has got to be pretty rough, especially if you dealt with that in 2002, 2008, and now 2020 and today. It can feel like you take 2 steps forward, 1 step back for sure. So, but you got to be mentally tough. You got to invest in yourself. You got to bet on yourself, because at the end of the day, that's going to be who you can really count on. So I hope this is helpful for you. And, it's going to be, it's always going to be a challenge. There's always going to be challenges, but you are tougher than those challenges. And you really have to think about, just remember, keep the flame alive. Whatever your dream is, keep that flame alive and keep working on it. So don't mistake activity for achievement. And I'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.